Good morning, Jamie, and welcome to Business Spotlight Series. Jamie is the CEO of Insignia Technologies, founded in 2012 and based in BioCity, Scotland. Insignia Technologies uses smart plastics and inks to produce simple, cost-effective, color-changing labels for packaging. So, Jamie, would you like to tell us a little bit more what you do and how you got into Insignia?
Sure. So as a company, the color changing pigment or the underlying chemistry can be used in many different industries. I came in as CEO just over a year ago and really took my experience in the healthcare drug development market and have positioned us more into healthcare space and working in hospitals and kind of medical practices around the world. So my background is biology. And worked a long time in the biotech world, more in a commercial role. So this opportunity came up. It was just down the road, and they snapped me up.
Great promotion. Well, congratulations on that, Jamie. And what in the space you've been as a CEO at Insignia, what learnings could you share with us?
I think although we're an old company, we were very much research for the first kind of decade. So I think for the biggest learning is although there's a world of possibility, it's being really focused and actually accepting that you can't be everything to everyone, and actually just honing in on one thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just the right thing, because if you commit all of your kind of resources and time and efforts to it, the chances are you will make it a success. So focus. People are very important, but I think that kind of works at any level. But at the size of company that you're kind of very reliant on the experience of the staff. So there has to be that kind of trust there. But you also have to have one eye for the future, that either that person might not be in that role in 3, 4, 5 years' time. So the importance of building a team around each other, but also future-proofing it so that you're not dependent on that person should they want to move into a different role or the needs of the business change. And thirdly, there's a lot of money out there, but not all money is good money. So there are a lot of investors, there are a lot of funds, and you have to kiss a few frogs before you get the right ones there. Everyone will quite happily write you a check, but it's what do you have to give up? Not just equity, but time and things like that goes along with it. So that was a very long answer to your question.
Great insights. Thanks for sharing that, Jamie. Talking about the team, how many people do you have to date?
So we've got around 10 people at the moment.
Okay.
So still a pretty small team.
And are you on growth mode at the moment? Are you recruiting? Are you expanding? Or
so we're not at the moment, but in the next 12 months we probably would look to kind of expand. So this is our kind of first year of being properly commercial, if that makes sense. So we've kind of moved away from research. So we've got enough to do hopefully the targets that we've set. And then the idea would be to kind of grow and expand as needed, because that's when the fun stuff happens.
Okay. How do you, so in terms of COVID, how did COVID affect the business, and how are things post-COVID?
So COVID was tough. So I think historically we were very much focused on the food industry. So even, from the newspaper articles and things like that, the food industry was ravaged by COVID. So that was the big need, was how do we pivot the business into something else, which was thankfully healthcare. But in terms of staff, we had to go down to a minimum kind of work. Staff had to furlough a lot of people. How do you keep the morale up? How do you make sure that the people that are furloughed don't believe that they're surplus to requirements? It's not, they weren't furloughed because we can do without them in the long term. They were furloughed because it was a short-term need, and it was trying to keep those people motivated, even though they weren't really involved in the business, which was hard. to do. Not even just in this business, but all of the other businesses that I was kind of involved in over that kind of crazy 2 years that we've all lost of our lives. So yeah, it impacted us a lot. Our customer base reduced, but also just your day-to-day working. It was hard, and everyone felt it. Brought us all a bit closer together, but also it was tough, really tough.
And how are things now? Have you adapted to the new normal, as they call it?
Yeah, so we still have a lot of people, either working remotely or things like that. I do think people are slowly starting to shift back into they like being in the office.
Yes.
There's only so many, kids and spouses that you can put up with 7 days a week. Personally, having a 3-year-old who was an infant during COVID, it was an interesting time. So for me, getting out of the house was fantastic.
Yes.
So yeah, I think people are slowly migrating back to the office for that kind of social element, but they're having the freedom to work from home as and when required, and not really having to ask permission to do it. I think is great. So yeah, I think we're back to the new normal, but I do think that there seems to be a lot more freedom for people without it being this weird. You must only work this number of days away. It's just more fluid, be more understanding of the crap that goes on in people's lives,
Yes.
which I think, though, for us anyway, seems more accepting of that.
Yes. Now, many businesses embrace technology because of COVID, and then they adopted a hybrid model, like yourselves, improving the quality of life and of work as well. So as long as you have the technology to do that, that's great. What's Jamie? What are your aspirations for the business, for Insignia, in the next 5 years?
So if you spoke to our investors, they would probably say an exit. There might be an exit of some sort, but for us, it's to solidify the business and actually get a toehold. For us, it's weird. We've very much focused on the US North American market. Because the healthcare with the NHS is actually quite hard to get into in the UK. So it will be to have grown a substantial amount of our business in the US, but also maybe having that toehold in the UK, and then within that kind of national health service would be a big goal for us. In terms of personnel, probably double the staff. Historically, I've been in service companies where every time you wanted to grow, you would have to hire 10 or 20 more people. This being more of a product company, I'm excited by the ability to still grow in terms of staff, but at a pace that allows us to still know who's all in the business without it going this exponential of staff. So yeah, 5 years still to be here. I don't know whether, still to be a functioning business, but I think we should be quite a sizable company in terms of revenue in 5 years, all going well.
Great. And Jamie, what have been the biggest issues you've had to overcome to date?
Biggest issues. I think the biggest thing that we've had is that mindset shift away from research into commercial. We're a scientific company, and scientists love science, which is great. But it's how do you keep staff motivated with the science, understanding that there's a customer paying at the end. So actually, clipping those scientific wings a little bit to get the work done to actually make it commercially viable, because it is very easy to be in this research mode all the time. So it's that shift away from pure research into something which will actually pay the bills. Has been it's been tough because, again, maybe the motivation or some of that excited that everyone loves research, everyone loves R&D, everyone loves that kind of stuff because it's why people got into science, and it's trying to keep people motivated while taking some of that away. It's definitely been a challenge.
Who is your ideal client then?
Our ideal client is probably healthcare providers. So those who have got, either operating rooms or some sort of kind of decontamination or medical device process there. So for us in the US, it's healthcare groups, it's hospitals themselves, and that would be the same in the UK. Yeah.
Okay, great. And what is your biggest challenge at the moment?
Biggest challenge is probably from it's a weird one, but probably from a branding perspective. So we have been around for a long time. We're known as like the label guys, even though that's not overly everything we do. And or the food guys, or all of that stuff that we've done historically. And essentially, we're not ignoring that, but that's on the back burner. And it's trying to then get people in the healthcare space to actually not necessarily take seriously, but to understand who you are without that historic baggage, which is very juxtaposed to what we're trying to do now in terms of how you brand yourself in that industry. Greens and yellows and all of these things are fantastic in the food industry.
Yes.
Nothing works like that in the healthcare. If people see green and yellows, it means disease and dirt. So I think the branding element and repositioning ourselves from a customer perspective is the hard bit. But it's the bit that everyone tells you is easy. It's a logo, it's a brand, it's a keyword, it's all of that stuff. But it's harder than that. You have to almost live it every day and believe it yourself that you're not that anymore. You are this.
Yes. Yes.
So that's probably the biggest challenge that we've had.
Okay, so the branding, very good. If you started again, what would you do differently?
Not take the job. No, I'm only joking. Started again. It's a tough one. It would probably be on that investor front, and I don't want to come out as ungrateful. We have a very large long tail investor group, which is fantastic. There's a wealth of experience in there, but it would be maybe nicer to have done that in a smaller way. Now that we know who we are, we might not needed all of that. We could have maybe done it on a shoestring or something like that.
Yes.
It's what we've done in other companies. So now we've got quite a long tail, and now we've got that commercial story, but we've got a lot of people who, rightfully so, are wanting to see the benefit of their investment and that return. So it might have been to start something a little bit smaller and brought on less investors and kind of built up that way. But again, that might just be from me who's inherited a company with a lot of investors.
Yes.
So that's the only kind of thing that I would say, because a lot of time is spent with investors and making sure that they're happy and they're getting that return and that update.
Yes.
But it can distract from the day to day.
Yeah. Alongside those lines, people tend to overestimate the short-term targets and underestimate the long-term targets.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, interesting.
It's the short term is important, but it's not as important as the long term. But we have these, we live on a quarterly basis. Why? We're not a big company. Why should we? We live on half years, fiscal years. We live on, a 3-year plan, because that's typically what people is their investment cycle, or 5-year plan. Who's to say we can't pull together a 12.5-year plan? But it's just not the norm. And there's that very prescribed way of dealing with investors and money and business.
Yes.
But it's some of it's personally, I think, arbitrary. It's irrelevant.
Yes.
If you do the little things right, week in, week out, month in, month out, towards a long goal, you're going to hit all of your little goals.
Correct. Yeah. That's what Stephen Covey said in the 7 Habits. One of the habits, start with the end in mind, and then do what you've just said to get there. Yeah. Brilliant.
But it's hard, because you've got those external pressures of where's your quarterly earnings, what are you doing here, and it's always that kind of 12-week cycle that you live on.
Yes.
And it doesn't sound exciting when your 12-week cycle is the little thing.
Yes.
But it's just, well, they put me in this job, so they just have to deal with it.
Yeah. Good. One may need to educate investors,
Yeah, but I can't. What's it? My mother would say, looking a gift horse in the mouth. I feel like it would be a bit rich of me to go and tell an investor how to spend their money, because they've obviously managed to find it some way.
Yeah,
been
no,
successful in
definitely.
some way in their life to have earned
Yes,
some decent money to do it. So yeah.
yes.
Uh,
Okay, and who do you have a hero you look up to?
see, that's a tough one. There's the soppy ones, fathers and all that kind of stuff, which I would absolutely say in the world of business, it's a weird one. There's certain celebrities who actually would do it. It's your Ryan Reynolds of the world who has had a very successful career and is a very successful businessman. And I think for me, it's less about what he's done. It's the fact that he has the same 24 hours that everyone else does, albeit he's got a big team around him. But it's his confidence on decision making, which I think is it's those kind of things. I'll hum and haw about a decision for days and stuff like this, and these people they realize they don't have the time to do that, and actually getting things wrong is okay. So
Yeah,
there's those elements. So it sounds pretty annoying just to say like a Ryan
yes,
Reynolds or one of those guys, but again, it's those guys entering the business world who don't necessarily have that track record, but can become very successful in it. I think that's a very impressive thing to do.
yeah, yeah. Oh, wow, incredible. Um, and Jamie, one last question here from me. Do you have any advice for your 18-year-old self?
Yeah, another weird one, and it's going to sound a bit arsed, but you don't. I think people will assume if you've been in an industry for a certain period of time, it was always this thing was, well, I've been doing this for 20 years. It doesn't necessarily make you better at it than me. And I think if I had that confidence at 18, that actually you don't have to be a world leading trailblazer to be above average at whatever you set your mind to. And I think there's that confidence. We would always defer to those who have done a job longer than you, or with all of this experience. But it doesn't matter. I could play golf, and I've been playing golf since I was 8. So I've been doing that for 30 years. I
What
am not
handicap, if
good.
I may ask? I'm 25, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm better than that. But I'll play off about 8 at the moment. But it's
Very good, very good.
again, it's just because I've been doing it for 30 years doesn't mean that I'm exceptional at it. And I think that mindset, 18, and actually injecting a bit of confidence in my 18-year-old self, that maybe a little bit of arrogance in there as well, but actually just being confident in yourself, and that numbers mean nothing.
Yes,
You can be 18 and take over the world if you want. You don't have to do the conventional sort of
yes.
stuff. So yeah.
Well, it's a brilliant piece of advice to young entrepreneurs watching this recording. And then before we wrap up, Jamie, is there any particular event or offer you would like to share with those watching this recording that would like to sign up to?
Nothing from like a kind of corporate perspective. What I've been doing a little bit with is if people are wanting to spend time, I'm not a lexicon of knowledge, but I'm a relatively young guy leading a business and things like that. So it's kind of opening that up if people want to get in touch. There's either things I can help with or things I can brainstorm with and stuff like that. Then there's a pretty open invite to anyone who's kind of interested, because it's more than a job. It's a bit of a passion. I just love this kind of stuff. So
Fantastic.
yeah. So
Great share, and I'm sure some people will be reaching out to you. And well, Jamie, it's been a real pleasure to have you join us today at the Spotlight, Business Spotlights, and for sharing your experience and wisdom and candor with us today. Thank you so much.
thanks very much for having me, and hopefully it wasn't a wasted 20 minutes for your watchers or listeners.
Brilliant.